Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Zoom virtual meeting for the Town of Fountain Hills Active Transportation Plan. Good to have so many of you here joining us this evening. My name is John Wesley. I'm the Development Services Director for the Town of Fountain Hills. I'm going to give a little bit of a background, some logistics on the meeting this evening, and then we'll be turning it over to our consultant here in a few minutes. So the main things, logistics-wise, we'd like everyone so we can hear to keep their computers or phones muted until time for asking questions, so we don't get a lot of background noise or feedback. We're sure we're able to hear each other as the presenters speak and as questions are asked. You'll also note at the bottom of your window for the Zoom meeting, there is a button that you can push for chat. So if you have a question that you think of along the way or comment you want to make, you can use that chat button to go ahead and get that comment or question out for us to look at and be ready to respond to a little bit later on in the meeting when we get to that point. So again, we're here to talk about the active transportation plan that we're getting started with. An active transportation plan is about non-motorized transportation opportunities, primarily walking, biking, running, those types of things. And so primarily focused on bicycle paths, sidewalks, how those integrate with streets, and looking for gaps and challenges that we might have in the town where there may be some safety issues. As we develop this plan, it will ultimately go to the town council for their review and approval. We're targeting having that done by June of next year. And once it's approved, it'll be a guide for the council and for the staff, as we have the opportunity to establish priorities for improvements in the system based on the input we'll receive from the town and the study we've been able to have of the needs of the community. So for tonight's meeting, main purpose is for our consultant to fill you in on some of the preliminary work they have done in their examination of the town and some of the resources we've been able to pull together with existing conditions in the town, but then also primarily for them to receive input and feedback from the citizens of the community. Let us know what challenges you see, where you want to walk, where you want to bike, what those needs are, so they can incorporate those that input as they prepare a first draft of the plan. When that draft is ready, you also have the opportunity to participate in reviewing that draft and final drafts on the way to getting those plans to council. So we are looking for citizen involvement and input all along the way. Very important to us, make sure we're really capturing what's needed in the town for improvements to the bicycle and pedestrian pathways that we have. So our consultant this evening is J2 Engineering and Environmental Design. They are a local firm dealing with engineering and landscape architecture work around the state, around the valley. I'm not sure how far out they go, but they've done other active transportation plans, and so they're experienced in this and are a good partner for us through this process. Our lead consultant is Jeff Engelman, and I'm going to turn it over to him here in just a moment so that he can lead you through the discussion that they have and present some of that background information that's available. When we get done with his presentation, I'll take it back to talk a little bit about our SurveyMonkey survey that we have available on our website that we hope you fill out and you encourage other people to fill out, so we continue to get that information about what the needs are in the town. And then after that, we'll open it up to the various comments and questions that we have. So with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go through your presentation.
Thank you, John. I'm going to pull up a screen. John, if you can share, we'll share our screen here. And just want to verify visually that everybody can see a screen with a very rough schedule on it.
Yep.
Okay. So let's just talk about where we're at today on September 9th, 2020. We are in our information gathering and inventory and analysis step of the project. You can see that we're going to make sure we take our time on this to gather as much information from the city as well as the citizens. As John mentioned, the citizens of the town of Fountain Hills are very important to this ATP. So we've already held our project kickoff meeting. We've gotten a great amount of data from the town, from GIS data collection. We've also collected crash data from bicyclists and pedestrians from ADOT and the town. And we've initiated some of our own internal field research about what's happening in the town on sidewalks, bike lanes, bike routes. Obviously, tonight is our first public meeting, but there will be multiple opportunities for town residents to voice their opinion and give us their feedback. Tonight is the first, and as John mentioned, there's an online questionnaire that we've developed to hopefully help all of the citizens give us their input as we move through the process. So we're looking to complete our inventory analysis this fall and then move into a preliminary ATP where we will develop a draft report. We'll go to the town council in a work session. We will hold a joint committee meeting of planning and zoning and the community services advisory members. And again, the town will have another chance to review that draft report. We will be coming back out to the public with that draft report. We're looking to have a booth at the Festival of the Arts November 12th and 13th and 14th and 15th. Again, that's tentative pending public gathering recommendations from both the town and the state. But right now we're scheduled to be at that event, and then there'll be an additional public meeting following that where there'll be additional online input, not required, but requested from citizens. And as we move through the preliminary in the spring and early summer of 2021, we'll finalize that ATP and take it again back to the Joint Committee of Planning and Zoning and Community Services Advisory members. And again, go back to the town council for final approval. And again, there'll be another public meeting before all of that is said and done so that we can showcase the final ATP to the public and make sure we haven't missed anything. So that's kind of the schedule in a very quick synopsis. And now I'm just going to show you a couple of maps that we're working with. And this is a map that we're building upon that was developed and started by the town of Fountain Hills back in 2007. And it shows existing sidewalks, both public and private. And you can see there are areas with no red lines or no gold lines on it. We want to make sure that we're looking at those neighborhoods to make sure that we've got some connectivity happening in those in a progressive sort of a way. This won't all happen at once. This plan is meant to be phased over a long period of time. So we are just, again, setting a roadmap for the town to follow to make sidewalk connections. And again, we're looking for feedback from the community on if they know of sidewalks in their neighborhood that start and stop, or that maybe they're in disrepair or other things, or you wish there was a sidewalk in your neighborhood. We really want to hear about those from you. And then the other part of this is bike lanes and bike routes. And this map shows you the existing Fountain Hill bike lanes and bike routes that exist right now. And again, if you're a biker or a bicyclist, either recreational or commuter, we kind of want to know from you where you see gaps, again, in the bike connectivity within the town of Fountain Hills. We'll be looking at that very, very closely, like we are with the sidewalks, to again give the town a roadmap to follow to improve roads, stripe roads, put signage up, et cetera, in regards to bike lanes and bike routes. So we're looking for your feedback on those as we continue to move through the process. And then the last graphic, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing out in the field. We know that we have some typical slopes along the curbs and gutters, so that top row of pictures demonstrates some of the examples, not every example. We're seeing landscaping with large riprap. We've got some lots that are still yet to be developed. We've got lots that have put down granite. We have existing turf in some of the areas that we're having to deal with, and some slopes. Then we know we have typical sidewalk gaps where the sidewalk will just end, as shown kind of on these 3 or 4 pictures, where you might be walking and then all of a sudden you're either having to transition to a granite walkway or out into the street. And we're trying to avoid that and trying to make those connections more readily available for pedestrians. So we're going to be scouring the neighborhoods and the town to find those gaps. And that's where, again, the public comes into play. We know we also have some typical riprap and landscaping along the curbs, even post office boxes, mailboxes, etc. So those might be situations where we look at maybe modifying the actual street itself to accommodate sidewalks, and as opposed to disturbing and or relating to all of the things that we might have to get out of the way. And then we also know that we have varying curb types within the town. So on the bottom left is what's called a ribbon curb. It's very flush with the asphalt. Then we have a roll curb, which is the second picture. And because Town of Fountain Hills was developed mainly by private development, we have what's called a wedge curb. And then we have the vertical curb, which is a typical curb and gutter situation you might see in other cities. Each of these curbs would have a relationship with the sidewalk and the handicap ramps and accessibility that we would also be at least looking at relative to all the curb returns and things like that. So we'll be looking at curb types, we'll be looking at sidewalk gaps, we're looking at landscaping and any impacts that might happen adjacent to the curb and gutters that we're dealing with, and trying to minimize disruption as much as possible. So those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at, John, as we work our way through this process. And part of that gives back information to us, not only tonight and those other public meetings, but it's the ability of citizens to complete that online survey. And again, we've created an online survey, and John's going to take you through how to access that survey through the city's or through the town's website. It's really easy. I think there's like 20 questions, and it will give us and the town a lot of information to use to build upon. So with that, John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, there we go. I thought I was unmuted. Okay, so to find the survey they have available, if you go to the city's website, fh.az.gov, just right here from the homepage, scroll down to find the link for the plan, the graphic that you'll see with our materials. And when you click on that, you can then scroll down to just under the register line here. There's complete the online survey. And so when you click on that link, it takes you to the survey. It's a fairly short survey, and fairly easy to click and provide answers on most of it. There are some areas here where we're looking for your comments, the information that you'll need to type in terms of answering the question. So where do you walk most frequently? So we know where people are going, so we know where to focus on for any improvements. And there are areas where you'd like to walk but can't because there aren't any sidewalks. So the questions continue on, and then I also ask similar questions about bicycles. And so if you're a bicyclist, and where do you bicycle most frequently, or where can't you go because the system's not there to allow you? And what are you looking for in terms of your bicycle provisions here in terms of lines or other options? And so go through and answer each of those questions. And then when you're finished, you simply click the done button, and that's it. Shouldn't take very long, just 17 questions total. And so we hope you take the time to complete that. It'll give us a lot of good information. And then we'll be able to get that. Be sure and encourage others that you know to get out there and fill out that survey. Again, it'll be very helpful to us for you to do that. The survey will be up for a couple of weeks, so you don't have to rush out and do it right away. We want to give people plenty of time to find it and think about their responses and get those turned in. So that is really what we have this evening in terms of the presentation. And so in just a minute, we're going to be ready to open it up for comments and questions that you may have. So again, remember at the bottom of the screen, there is a chat feature. So if you'd like to use that to just write out your question instead of verbally providing the question, feel free to do that. We'll be monitoring those questions that come in and using those as part of what we provide answers to. If you do want to ask a question, again, so we can keep this orderly, We ask that you use the raise your hand button on your screen, raise your hand, and then in order we can call on people as they have raised their hand. And also if you're just using phone and not on the computer, if you use *9 on your phone, that will allow you to basically raise your hand, let us know you want to ask a question, make a comment, and then be sure when you are going to make a comment, unmute yourself, and once you're done, to go ahead and put it back on mute. And so if we can follow those rules, I think we should be able to get through this pretty quickly and be able to hear what each other has to say and get some good information and feedback. So with that, I believe we are ready to take some questions. I see we have had about 10 chat comments come in already. And so, Ann, if you've been maybe monitoring those for any comments that you can provide, that would be good. Or we have anybody that wants to go ahead and ask a question.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Barry Wilborski. And one of the things I noticed when my wife and I walk for exercise 6 mornings a week, and we go different walks around the area, we noticed that the flora is not trimmed back off the sidewalk, and in some areas it blocks partially the sidewalk or completely the sidewalk, which forces you into the road, which is not very comfortable. It seems like as part of this process, a very economical way for the city to make the town more hospitable to walkers would be to clear the sidewalks. I think that's a lot cheaper than building sidewalks and that type of thing, and it could be done relatively quickly. That's all I've got.
So, Jerry, one quick response to that particular comment or question is there maybe has been some confusion in the past about whose responsibility some of that sidewalk clearing is. We are getting ready to take an item to council that does help clarify whose responsibility is to trim vegetation away from the sidewalks and trim up trees so that you can get through there without it blocking people's path. So we are working on that from that perspective already.
One of the problems, of course, is that we have a lot of non-resident owners, and especially the empty lots are non-resident owners. If you're going to go after the owners to do it, it's going to take forever, and you probably won't get it done.
It is a challenge. We do have code compliance staff out there working on those things, so it is a challenge, but appreciate you bringing up that point. Jeff, from the position of the active transportation plan, do you see how that fits in with how that might be addressed?
John, yeah, we can definitely make a mention of it. You know, the actual landscape maintenance, like you just stated, would fall more to the town's enforcement team. But we can evaluate and maybe come up with a plant list that would be suggested nearby sidewalks that doesn't tend to get very big. And we can put that as an appendix in the back of the report so that someone that comes in to develop and wants to build a sidewalk would then know what vegetation is right sized for those types of situations.
Okay. Who's next?
Hey, John, is it my turn?
Yes.
Hey, Jeff, has any technology been used to see where people are actually walking around in town? Like I know Strava publishes a website where they track, you know, where people are using their activity trackers and walking around town. It kind of generates a heat map that might be useful in determining where sidewalks need to go.
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. We will be tapping into Strava data. We use Strava data to map, just like you said, where the heavier bicyclist areas are. Most people use Strava for riding, although Strava is available for walking and or hiking as well to track your mileage and that type of thing. So we will be mining that data as well. There are some pedestrian counters that can be put out that actually count pedestrians when they use a pathway. We don't have that right now in the town of Fountain Hills, but you can talk to the city of Phoenix and city of Mesa. They use those counters on some of their trails, and we might be able to discern some information from them based on those eco counters that they're using on some of their trail systems.
Interesting. Okay.
So who do we have next?
Can I go next?
Yes.
Great. So I cycle and walk, and as does my wife, Karen. And it's great that you're looking at these suddenly ending sidewalks. I mean, I don't mind not really having a sidewalk on a side street, but like on Palisades or Fountain Hills Boulevard or Saguaro, I think it's important to have them. So that's where I would first look at it as far as the sidewalks. And the other fellow that talked about clearing the sidewalks, I think that's important. And, you know, because in a lot of places you're walking and all of a sudden you walk into a Palo Verde or something. And especially in the dark, seeing as how we're a dark sky community, it's a little bit difficult that way, which is great. I like being a dark sky community. Now, the other couple things that I find is, for example, if I'm cycling on Palisades, and for some reason it happens right at Fountain Hills Boulevard, and if I'm heading towards the fountain, at that turn into the Safeway parking lot, it seems like for some reason, cars almost hit me there fairly often. I don't know why. The drivers are, I guess, unaware about bicycles or not being observant or being distracted or whatever. I don't know. But it's quite scary cycling that stretch of Palisades. And
John, if I may, when he's done.
Sorry? I don't know what someone said.
It was Justin, the Public Works Director. I would like to add some information in regards to your statement about sidewalks on Palisades and Saguaro. We currently have received a grant from MAG in the amount of $2 million that will allow us to do infill on Saguaro and Palisades. In fact, the Assistant Town Engineer, Ann Basic, and I are currently working on an SOQ, a Statement of Qualifications for the design for those areas. So that will be included as part of the improvements that will be shown on this long-range plan. And then secondly, I would like to address your comment in regards to eastbound travel Palisades east of Fountain Hills Boulevard in regards to the bike lane. When you have a situation like that, if you notify us, we can install a sign there that says right turn use bicycles. And that will at least provide a visual indicator of the motorists should be watching for cyclists in that area.
So was everybody able to hear Justin's responses?
It's kind of garbled, but he said we have to contact him.
Okay, so be sure and mute when you're done with your comments and questions. And then if it's your turn, you might make sure you don't have more than one device going on at the same time to cause some feedback. So Kimberly, you're going to try it again? Or maybe that's something else.
I heard that there was a grant, but I couldn't hear what kind of a grant it was. I guess that's not that important. It sounded like it was for $2 million, which is exciting, if that's right.
So Justin, you want to cover that again? Yeah, maybe sit up a little closer.
Are you able to hear me clearly now, John?
That's better now.
Thank you. Yes, the grant that the town of Fountain Hills applied for was through the Maricopa Association of Governments, and we received $2 million for sidewalk infill.
Okay. So
I had been wondering where the money was going to come from, so that answers that.
Okay.
May I step in, John?
Yes.
Thank you. So a couple things. One is I know that the intersection of Palisades and Fountain Hills Boulevard, One of the challenges, not only for cyclists, but I think also for pedestrians, and I think throughout the town, is that there's that apartment complex that's right across from Safeway, and people tend to cross in the middle of the street. And so that becomes a big traffic hazard, not only for the motorists, but for the cyclists and also for the walkers who are crossing in that area. I don't know if it's ever been brought up to put some type of permanent concrete barriers to allow pedestrians not to cross and to force them to the crosswalks. So that's something I just want to throw out. And I also know that intersection does get a little congested in the morning. I drive that road every day in a vehicle, but also on my bicycle. And I know when people are making those right turns, they are not watching for those cyclists coming up alongside of the vehicles, because I have been honked at on a red light before to go, and I can see in my mirror a cyclist coming up, and I'm sitting there waiting for that cyclist. And also there's walkers in the morning, especially between, I would say, the hours of 5 and 6 is pretty heavy because people are out early, especially this time of year because of the heat. So those are probably the big things that I have noticed as far as like safety concerns. But throughout the town, I've noticed the fact that even people who are in motorized vehicles or wheelchairs, they have a hard time accessing some of the walkways because of those bumps in the walkways. Because I've helped people up those walkways before. So that's something as we move forward, maybe to look at.
John, if I may.
Sure.
I'm going to address the first part of your comment, ma'am, and thank you for bringing that up during this meeting. Last calendar year, a mid-block crossing study was brought to the mayor and council to determine whether or not they wanted to spend the money to have an engineering firm review that. It was decided based on the cost not to move forward with that. However, we also, during that council meeting, heard from several council members that northbound Fountain Hills Boulevard, left turn to westbound Palisades, at certain times of day, the current left turn pocket for northbound was not sufficient, and the stacking was too big and entering into the number one, that's the left lane northbound. And as a result of this stacking and the mingling of traffic for northbound through and northbound left turn, we were also not able to service the number of vehicles. On that, I'm currently working with an engineering firm to do a study of that entire intersection. There's a caveat here. As of recent, our traffic counts as a whole have been reduced substantially as a result of the pandemic. And so we are currently trying to determine when the best time is to do a traffic study, because one of the biggest impacts that we see on that, and we have all the crash data, we have information and data that is typically not released to the public, shows that we also have a few accidents there that need to be addressed. So we need to wait until school is in session so we can do peak time AM and lunchtime and PM, and also when the uptick or the traffic counts are increased, to make sure that we are adequately determining the next stages for making improvements to that intersection.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Who else has a question or comment they'd like to share?
Don, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Jim Dickey.
Yeah.
A couple of things. I'm looking at the very end of the report, and a couple of things that I hope the report will be able to do is to, first of all, offer us a prioritization list of important things that need to be done in some kind of order, whether it's short-term or long-term, or in some other way, to make sure that when a recommendation goes to council, that they have an idea of what the study team believes are the most important things, and along with that, then Also, at least a 30,000 foot level of how much they might cost. I think that's an important way for the council to be able to evaluate whatever the study comes up with. The other thing that I'm hoping the study will do is to address, and we've kind of touched on it in a couple ways already, the policy level kinds of decisions that council needs to make in order to implement whatever needs to be implemented. For instance, somebody brought up about maintenance of sidewalks along private property or commercial property. Maybe it's time to reevaluate some of that policy level stuff to make sure that it's clear what the responsibilities are of the owners or in some cases the builders when they are building on property that's adjacent to an area where there's a scheduled or planned amenity, whether it be a bike lane or a sidewalk. Those are two things that I was really looking forward to come out of this. That way it's clear that there's some kind of methodology moving forward, that you just don't have a report that has a whole list of things, but there's no strategy on how to complete them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jim, for that. And I do believe that those things will be included. Jeff, do you have any comment you want to make on what your expectations are for those items?
You know, we were definitely going to address, obviously, the prioritization and the 30,000 foot level cost. The one that we typically don't address directly is the policy level decisions for maintenance of adjacent lands, because again, we're looking at walkways and bikeways, not how landscape is maintained adjacent to those, John. So we'll have to talk to the town about, this may not be the best avenue to address those policy issues. That may have to come from a different tack. But the other two, absolutely, we're planning on addressing.
Okay.
John, this is Jerry Butler.
Yes, Jerry.
I normally walk the downtown area because it's flatter. It's easier for old people. I used to live in the hills, but that became too difficult. What I've discovered walking downtown is when you walk across the avenue at the mid-block points where there are sidewalk crossings, there are signs there that point out that this is a pedestrian crossing. But very few people ever stop. And I'm standing there waiting because the car is going to win if I walk out in front of it. It's like, what can we do to improve or call attention to the fact that the car is supposed to yield to the pedestrian? Also down at the end of the avenue at Saguaro, I think that is one of the most dangerous crossings for pedestrians because there are 2 lanes of traffic. Yes, I've walked across and the car in the number 1 lane will have stopped for me. But the car in the 2nd lane next to it can't see across that car or through that car, and they pull out. It's like, oh, that's a surprise. And as a driver, I've been caught in that situation too. It just seems to me that to make that intersection more pedestrian friendly, to have some sort of a flashing lights that pedestrian could push, that the motorist would know that there is a pedestrian in the crosswalk. I think what Justin has done in the last few years to add paintings, striping on those crosswalks is a tremendous improvement. But still not everyone's abiding by it. So I don't know whether there's something that could be done for the pedestrians in the downtown area. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Jan, looks like you might be next.
Hi. Comment regarding the maintenance. We've noticed a tremendous amount of debris that's left in the shoulder of the road that appears to occur after the street cleaners go through, and as well a lot of debris that ends up in the center of the road, which makes it difficult for cyclists to safely ride in the shoulder and then is pushing them out into the lane of traffic. So hoping that that can be addressed as part of the overall maintenance plan or the streets plan. And then a comment going along with some of the concerns regarding the intersections. There are several of larger towns, and I don't know what our budget is going to be, who do have on their walk or on their streets, they'll have bike lanes that have a different color to help alert motorists to that crossing, as well as some of those lanes actually have some type of a signal opportunity where a cyclist does not have to get off of their bike, cross over to the walk signal and press a button. So perhaps something like that could be of consideration also.
Okay, thank you. So Corey, you have your hand up again?
Yes, one more time. I know when I walk and it's on a more of a meandering sidewalk, I feel safer because there's some sort of a buffer between me and the street. So I'm just wondering the strategy there, if there is room or an opportunity to kind of move that sidewalk out a little bit from the street and create some sort of landscape in between. Is that the preference? Is that kind of the strategy there?
I'll give my quick answer, then I can see if Jeff has anything to follow up with. But generally, yes. As you say, pedestrians do feel safer if there's something that can buffer them from the cars, whether it's a landscape area or if it's cars parked along the street. Something like along that line does usually help. But we also, as Jeff pointed out in his presentation, we've got a lot of constraints along our roadways currently with the topography that we're dealing with, that maybe doesn't leave much room for a sidewalk, much less a separated or meandering sidewalk in a lot of cases. So it's going to be a lot of individual study. It's going to be coming up with several options and solutions, and then figuring out the best places or what works best in a given location. Jeff, any other comments?
No, I think you hit it right on. We're going to give a bunch of alternatives to the town, and each neighborhood, each block is going to have to be evaluated based on what's going to be the best fit there. And it's not going to be a one size fits all.
Okay, who's next? Other comments or questions?
Hi, this is Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, just had a question here, or a couple of them. First one is to do with your questionnaire on SurveyMonkey. And I noticed when you start at the very beginning, you say, are you a full-time resident of Fountain Hills, yes or no? Like, what do you plan to do with that information? Because I mean, there's a lot more than just a full-time resident, we've got seasonal residents. Like, I don't know what that one question, is there a priority or whatever if you're full-time versus not? Because there's just not enough. Because it could be somebody from anywhere in the world answering this question. They're going to just put in no, and yet their input, I would think, wouldn't have as much as, say, a part-time seasonal resident that's a taxpayer owner.
Right. So the main purpose there really was just to kind of have some idea of who we're getting as respondents to the survey. So we know, did we only get people who are full-time residents, and we didn't get maybe some of the seasonal ones who are gone part of the year, that type of thing. And you're certainly correct. Somebody around the world who doesn't really know Fountain Hills could find this and decide to fill it out. We don't think that's a big likelihood, but it has no real specific meaning beyond that, just to have the concept of where respondents are coming from.
Okay. And then can I just ask another question, just of Justin, actually, on the grant that you have for the sidewalk that you're doing? I know I've chatted with you before on it, and I'm just wondering if that's going to at all do anything for connection on Saguaro from Valera out towards the Target, that area, because there's no sidewalk there. Actually, the Valera residents in Fountain Hills are totally landlocked as a pedestrian. They have to walk on the road to get anywhere. So I don't know if that one's in there.
For clarification, the area she is discussing is on the south side of Shea, just west of the Target shopping center. And yes, ma'am, we do have sidewalk infill scheduled for that area. Some of that infill is directly tied to additional funding from the long range planners, where we get the money to widen Shea. But in the future, I can't give you a time frame right now because we're still working on it. There will be an infill from Valera that ties into the sidewalk just east of that location that comes west from the Target shopping center.
Okay. because that's information just to go with this plan, Jeff, that it kind of has an impact on how I would answer a question on here with regard to even cycling. Because right now, to come out of Valera, yeah, pretty much putting your life in your hands for a few blocks there. And there's absolutely no way you can go westbound as if you were going to go towards Fry's or whatever. So anyway, that was just a couple of comments I had. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. Who wants to be next?
I had a couple things that I thought of.
Okay.
Can we, have you looked at maybe reducing the speed limits?
So Jeff, I might have to have you respond to that. I don't know if you specifically look at speed limits, but certainly I would imagine part of exploring different routes and avenues, the speed on the street would at least inform or impact the type of design for the pedestrians or the bicyclist. I don't know if we get flipped the other way and use that to alter the speed. Jeff or Justin, either one have a thought or comment on that one?
Yeah, we would definitely take a look at that with engineering and the town staff to see if that's a feasible alternative. It's not off the plate, let me just put it that way.
I think other than being highly unpopular, reducing speed limits is ineffective. I think a pedestrian or a bicycle getting hit by a car at 25 miles an hour isn't going to make much of a difference between 35 miles an hour. When 6,000 pounds of steel meets 150 pounds of flesh, the results are ugly.
Well, that's true, but it does make a difference. And as you know, pretty much nobody obeys the speed limits. Everybody goes 5 or 10 over. So instead of being hit at 35, you're getting hit at 45.
This is Bernie. Actually, if anybody's been watching the town council meetings for the last couple of months, it's been a hot topic. They got safety control areas. They got different speed things that have been discussed. So you just need to coordinate with what the council is considering.
Bernie. So there are a lot of different factors that play off each other and have to work together to make it as safe as possible. Who else has a question or comment?
I would like to say something regarding the ability to get around, particularly in the downtown, as someone who's confined to a power chair, and I don't have any other alternative to get around in town but to use my power chair. It's really important for me to feel safe when I'm traveling on through the town. And I really appreciate Justin's willingness to meet with me and some of us who are in this situation and be aware of some of our unique issues. I know the trimming of the brush and things like that on the sidewalk is not that big of a deal necessarily to someone who is walking. It's a very simple thing to kind of sidestep that and go past it. But someone like me who is allergic to bees, I can't go but so far over. And much of the time I'm running into the bushes because I don't have I can't move far enough out of the way. And so I think that this is more of a safety issue than it is a matter of just, well, let's just keep Fountain Hills a little cleaner and a little more tidy. I think it's an issue for some of us who, like I said, we don't have an alternative. We have to use whatever is available to us to access the street, to go from the street maybe into a driveway or into oftentimes I'm going into driveways because there's no other way to get into a store or to a place. And the transition from the street to the driveway is very, very difficult oftentimes. And I think along with that, until you're actually in a power chair and forced to use some of the things that have been provided, that I know because Justin and I have talked about it, they're approved, they're ADA approved or whatever the approval is. That may be so, but I defy some of you to be able to actually navigate some of those things that are approved. And I think that because of the number of older people that are in town and the likelihood that more of us are going to be using these power chairs, and certainly during the fairs that are in town, a lot of people use power chairs, which while I'm thinking about that, you've all probably seen the blocks that they put over top of the wiring so that people don't trip over that. Well, if I go over that with my power chair gets stuck on it. So there are many safety features that exist in the town that go mostly unrecognized because there's not 1,000 of us in power chairs. There's only a few of us in power chairs. And oftentimes what we're told is that, well, it's ADA approved or that's in compliance with the fire department or whoever it is. But we're the ones that end up either stuck on it or trying to get somebody to help us to get off of it because it's not proper. It does not work for us. So I think that having some of us who were in power chairs, I'm sorry about that, about the dog, actually going with somebody or renting a power chair and you go along with us and see what it's like trying to negotiate these things, I think it would give you a much better perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie?
I'd like to just tag on to what the last gentleman said, because I know personally I had to do some rehab and I was on a walker. It's amazing. I did not realize how many curvy sidewalks are in Fountain Hills and how many sidewalks actually the grade when you're out trying to walk, what the grade is. So thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to tail that on to the end, John.
Thank you. Anybody else? Had a lot of good questions, a lot of good comments. It'll be very helpful.
This is Bernie. I'd like to tag on to what Sharon said earlier about, resident, non-resident, part-time, whatever. We're supposedly building tourism. So we have a lot of people that come in here that are not familiar with the town. So connecting the sidewalks or some signage would be helpful. And I'd still say that probably most of our cyclists don't live in town and they come whizzing through. So anything to help them to be able to recognize where the dangerous spots are. Us that live here locally and ride them every day, we know where to be careful. But the other folks coming through have no clue. The other thing that would be really nice is to connect the walkways to some of the trail access points. So we could benefit from that. Also with the tourists coming in, they could park someplace where it's safe and they could get to a sidewalk and then take it up to a trailhead or something. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this will be the last time I talk. I feel like I'm hogging it. Downtown on Fountain Avenue of the Fountains, and I guess that's Montana. That intersection where if you're walking in the middle and then you have to walk out to the outer sidewalk, then walk across Montana and then walk back to the middle. When I'm there, I would guess almost no one does that. Almost everybody just stays on Avenue of the Fountains and walks across the street there, even though they're not supposed to. At least that's what I've observed. And I thought, has anyone noticed that and maybe change it that's the way people should walk? It seems safer to do that too. I don't know.
So,
John, if I may.
Go ahead, yeah.
To help me understand the location better, Clyde, are you referencing Avenue of the Fountains in La Montana or Avenue of the Fountains in Verde River, sir?
I think it's Avenue in the Fountains of La Montana. It's in front of where those new apartment blocks are.
So that's Avenue of the Fountains and Verde River. And for those of you that have not had an opportunity, I recently came in and installed curb opening ramps and clearly marked crosswalks that allow you to walk from one section of the linear park to the other without going in what he described as a big H or U pattern. So those are, I just finished those up June 30th. So please, when you have an opportunity, Clyde, have a look at that and see if that improvement is available.
Oh, great. I'm not there, so I don't know. So that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Not seeing any other raised hands at the moment. Everybody that's been doing there, I've been kind of looking at the chats. Looks like there's been some good conversations back and forth on the chats, and hopefully everybody feels like they've gotten their comments or questions addressed there.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Oh, just one quick thing. I know on our town's app, there's a request tracker option, and I don't know if maybe it would be useful to use something like that. So when people are walking, if they come across something and they want to report it, they could snap a photo and send it in. It's right in like the town's app with all the, you know, that might be something that's helpful to make it easy for people to share that kind of data.
Okay, we can check on that and see.
I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be used for, but it could be.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Sure.
Hey, Justin, to your point, I frequently walk on the avenue, and definitely the new crosswalks that go right down the avenue between the two on Verde Drive is great. Thank you. Just have to pay attention though, because now cars that are taking a turn do have to cross multiple lanes of traffic and multiple crosswalks. But it is nice to just walk straight down.
Good, thank you.
Also, one other, Jeff had mentioned, I believe, originally about there was information collected, and I think on the first slide about accidents and collecting information from either police or from other sources. Is that information available about how many accidents there have been or how many reports?
Justin, you want to answer that, or Jeff?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. We do have crash data that is collected through a series of police reports, and that data is actually stored by the Arizona Department of Transportation. When we
move closer to your microphone.
When we need traffic crash data information, we use the ADOT website to collect it for an intersection or a segment of roadway. So yes, we do have access to crash data for all the roads and intersections from within the town of Fountain Hills. We, however, do not store it. We put in a request and then we gather that information from their site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've been at this for about an hour. Appreciate everybody's time. Again, we can still take questions as long as there are questions, but don't want to keep people if that is it for this evening. Remember the Survey Monkey opportunity to provide input that way, and watch for further information about follow-up meetings that we'll have coming up over the next few months. Any other comments or questions tonight? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so thank you. We will call it a game then, and Appreciate your being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.